You're listening to Eat, Play, Sex with Dr. Cat, the place to up-level that sexy life of yours, with expert talk on sex, love, and nutrition.
What are the arguments around this being a medical reason? Like, are there actual medical reasons why this would be appropriate?
If you have a pathology, if you have a lesion on the foreskin that can't be cured in another way, if the foreskin is impeding the flow of urine, although there's almost always a less invasive way of dealing with it. No, there's absolutely no medical indication for removing the foreskin of a healthy, normal child. None. Okay. Foreskin is not a birth defect. It's not a pathology. There's no more need for removing foreskin than there is for digging out a little girl's clitoris or removing her labia. There's simply no medical need. But you were asking about,
well, go ahead. So furthering with that, I've been doing some of my own research and seeing, just trying to figure out because this is such a hot topic and people are so divided on the decision, and so I was looking at the arguments for it, and people were saying things like reducing the risk of STDs, or reducing the development of urinary tract infections or penile cancer. And what has that been in your experience or your research? What does that look like?
Well, penile cancer, for one thing, let me just start with, it's not, babies don't have STDs. They're not having sex, right? So, so the idea that you would deprive a child of his foreskin for his entire life, plus you don't know, maybe he's going to be a priest. Maybe he does, he should be using condoms, right? So that you would cut off this pleasurable, healthy, normal body part because somebody might get exposed to something later is really quite a drastic intervention for somebody who can't consent for some hypothetical future preventive reason, right? You could sew up little girls' vulvas and greatly reduce the chances of them getting pregnant when they're teenagers, getting STDs. Well, we wouldn't do that. Right. So not good reasons. Urinary tract infections, girls get them at higher rates than boys. They can be cured with cheap antibiotics. Most of the men I know who are intact, boys said, "Oh, I never had a UTI ever, my whole life." And as far as penile cancer, it's one of the rarest cancers, one of the rarest human cancers. I believe that the ratio is 1 in 100,000 men. And if you compare that to breast cancer, it's 1 in 8 women will end up having some kind of breast cancer. So maybe we should, if we think that prophylaxis is a good thing, removing body parts to prevent cancer, there are a lot of body parts we're going to have to cut off.
So you bring up a really good point of look at the research that you're looking at. And really look at the numbers that are being presented, because, and as a researcher myself, it's like, how are we presenting the research out there oftentimes to convince people, right? It's not really that we're receiving this information and it's void of bias. It's oftentimes it has bias. It's not necessarily objective. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, but this is information that is put forth to justify something, to justify the unjustifiable. Right. And you have to kind of pull back and think about it and think of the analogies. Well, gee, why aren't we removing little girls' breast buds if they're going to have a 1 in 8 chance of getting breast cancer? We just simply wouldn't do it. And the other, and the STD, and then we also have natural epidemiological experiments throughout the world. So the United States has STD rates, including HIV, that are either the same or actually higher than comparable European countries with comparable standards of living. Probably has something to do with our poor sex education, right? And our failure to exercise prophylaxis in many ways, right? Which we're seeing now. So the natural experiment is that babies in Norway and France and Germany and England and China and are not dropping like flies from urinary tract infections. STDs are not rampant in these countries compared to the United States. And the HIV epidemic took off in the US at a time when probably between 85 and 90% of American men were circumcised.
Yeah.
So it's just,
Mhm.
and I say, you know, American cemeteries are full of circumcised men who died from AIDS. And so, you know, none of these things are justifications for cutting off a body part that's there for pleasure and protection. So I don't know if you want to go
Mhm.
back to your question, which I derailed, I'm sorry, about
Yeah,
what the
no.
function of the fore and what it does for pleasure. And we could,
Yeah.
if you want to talk about that, that's,
Pleasure.
want to
Yes,
go
I'm
there?
all about that pleasure. Mhm.
Okay.
How are we inhibiting our pleasure?
So, you know, if you think about it, the genitals, male genitals and female genitals, because male and female, male and females are needed to procreate the species, are designed to make people want to procreate, right? And to have sex. If it wasn't pleasurable, we wouldn't be able to, wouldn't make babies, right? So everything is there for a reason, and it all works together. So as you said, the
Mhm.
male foreskin, it slides and it glides. It also has a lubricating function. Um, because it
Mm.
protects the head of the penis, it keeps it from drying out. It keeps the penis from becoming, if in a circumcised man, the head of the penis and sometimes the entire shaft will become dry, and keratin will form, scar tissue, essentially a thin scar tissue. So, and then the skin is much less mobile, and in fact, it can even tight circumcision can almost ensure that a man will not be able to get a full erection. If enough skin is left, he might be able to get a full erection, but he won't have that sliding and gliding. So it, you know, becomes a circumcised penis becomes more like a stick, right? And immobile, where the skin is immobile. Whereas an intact penis, there's all this loose skin, which we so cavalierly call extra skin. I mean, it'd be like calling your,
Mhm.
like I said, like your lips are extra skin, or your
Mhm.
eyelids are extra skin, right? They're
Right.
for a purpose. And that's what enables easier intromission. You know, for the penis glides in more easily, and then it provides it's a thicker penis. An intact penis
Yes.
is thicker,
We all
right? It's
enjoy
got
that.
those two layers of skin, and it also works to the design of an intact penis works to keep lubrication from, you know, if it keeps the vaginal fluids from drying out as quickly. Now, circumcised men, we believe, from what I've heard, and their partners need to use a lot more lubricant than intact men.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, lubricant's fine, you know, thank goodness we have lubricant. But but the other thing
But
that,
there's also a lot of stigma around it too, where
right,
men and women will be like, "Oh, I don't want to use the lube because, that means that I'm not
I
either
should be, you know, wet. I should be
wet."
able,
Yeah.
yeah, right. And that's when I referred to, you know, my early years. I think that's one of the things that, you know, that girls and women, you know, somehow if they, you know, if they dry out, they think that they're not, they're going to be perceived as not enjoying sex, or as somehow failing, you
Mhm.
know. And I'm
Yeah,
sure, and
broken.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So so the foreskin helps with lubrication. And the
Mm.
other thing is, because everything works together, and we're trying to use some analogies, think about what how the vagina is designed, and with all the ridges, you know, inside the vagina, right? And
Mhm.
how that
Yeah.
stimulates the male, and that's made to work also with the mobile foreskin. The other thing is that the foreskin contains very special features, has very special features. Um, and one is there's a ridged band, which is where the inner and outer foreskin meet. And when that is pulled back, as in sex, all something called the Meissner's corpuscles, which populate the ridge band, get stimulated, and those are the same nerves that we have on the bottom of our feet. It's what make our feet ticklish. And also, like, you know, in a sexy movie, you see, you know, a woman like licking her lips as a come on. The
Yeah.
visors corpuscles are where the lips meet the mucosal membrane. And so that stimulates that. So those in circumcised men are gone. They're simply gone. That is all cut off and thrown in the garbage or sold to a biotech company, gone. And then the part of the penis where the foreskin is anchored down in an adult, as I said, it's anchored in an infant by being attached to the head of the penis, but the frenulum, which is on the underside of the penis, which is almost the exact tissue and function of the frenulum under your tongue, which is what keeps your tongue from falling back into your mouth when you lie down at night.
Right.
This pulls it forward.
Now,
And the frenulum,
exactly. I know that part.
And the frenulum of the penis returns the foreskin to its natural position, covering the glands with G-L-A-N-S, not gland or glands, but covers the glands of the penis, or the glans penis is one term, and it puts it back into place after it's been pulled back, whether it's for pleasure, for masturbation, for urination, or whatever. The frenulum returns it to the place. In a circumcision, most of the frenulum is removed, and the most sensitive part of the penis of a man who's been circumcised is usually that scar where the foreskin was removed, and it's that little bit of frenulum that remains is the most sensitive part of the penis. So, but all of those misers corpuscles, all the nerves, all that gliding action, all that skin that allows for a full erection, that's all gone. And
so this impacts erections, being able to maintain or reach full erections. Does this impact?
It can, right?
It
not
can.
in everything.
Okay,
Yeah, depends on how much foreskin has been
Got
removed.
it. Sure. Wow. Okay. And what about things like premature ejaculation or orgasms? Like, does it impact any of these other challenges?
Now, I'm going to just look at my notes here because I want to make sure that I say this properly. So, when you cut off the foreskin and you remove those nerves, a baby's not born, although fetuses can have erections in the womb and can and do touch themselves, and babies certainly can have baby erections, but sexual development occurs over the first 15 years, say, of life, right? And those neural pathways that result in a full sexual experience develop over that period of time. And it's easy to think about, it's easy to understand if you think babies aren't born knowing how to do a lot of things. I mean, they can't feed themselves, they can't crawl or walk. And those are what we call epigenetic phenomena. So you're born with that potential, actually language. If you miss that time to learn to speak, the rare cases of total isolation, your ability to speak is permanently damaged. If you miss the experience, if you're tied to a crib and you never can crawl, learning to walk becomes problematic, because these are all neural pathways that have to develop. So if a child loses his foreskin at birth, a lot of those pathways just won't develop normally. And that's, so we're living with we don't reach our full sexual potential if these tissues are removed or our neural development is interfered with at birth or shortly thereafter. If a man is circumcised as an adult, he'll have other physical consequences. could have other physical consequences, and he's certainly losing the Meissner's corpuscles, and he's getting a scar, and his glands and the shaft of his penis could dry out, but he will probably have more ability to mitigate, control his orgasms, his ejaculation. So part of what is lost in a circumcision is that feedback mechanism that lets men know where they are in the ejaculation process. So lack of that feedback mechanism and lack of ability to control that can result either in premature ejaculation or in delayed or inability to ejaculate. So sexual
What?
dysfunction is sometimes people say, well, it's a good thing because if I was any more sensitive, it would just be so terrible. Or women say, well, I like circumcision because it means the guy can last longer. Well, that's not what it's about. I mean, it's about how people's bodies work together and how women and men can communicate to either about orgasm and about other things too. But
Sure.
orgasm and ejaculation are different in men who were circumcised as children than they are in intact men. And I think that anyone who has had sexual experiences with both types of partners, and obviously one of each is not a good statistical sample.
Sure. And every person is a different sexual being who shows up differently sexually.
Lovers, thank you again for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, hit subscribe and head over to eatplaysex.com to connect with me and grab my sexy guides. Because my goal here is to get you to eat, play, and sex better so you can improve your sex life, which will improve every aspect of your life. Until next time, keep it sexy.